I'm going to call this meeting of the Addison Central School District to order. I'm going to call this meeting of the Addison Central School District to order. Today, Monday, October 10th, we're at the Bridgeport School. Let's start with introductions. Why don't we start at the end of the table here?
Joanna Doria, Barbara Wilson.
Peter Burrows, Superintendent.
Victoria Jetty.
Suzanne Buck.
Brian Bauer.
Heather Crowley.
Bruce McIntyre, Director of Facilities.
Mary Gill.
Chip Malcolm.
Mary Heather Noble.
Peter Conlon. Steve Orzek.
Jen Newseeder.
Principal. Great.
Lindsay's on.
Thank you. And Lindsay.
Hello, Lindsay Hescock from the virtual overall.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay, for joining us. At this time, let's see. Bruce, can you read off our attendees, please?
Attendees: Andrea Way, Emily Blistein, Aaron, and then MCTV is here.
Great. Thank you. At this time, as always, I will welcome public comment. If there's anyone in the room, we'll start there. And if there's anyone on Zoom who wishes to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to make a
Everyone, I'm Victoria. I live in Shoreham. And my comment tonight is regarding the Trucks Cones Elementary School report. So I see that those numbers are carried over from the original study with escalations built in. And I know this is only one variable that will go into the decision-making process, but we do know that the financial realities carry particular weight as we navigate and make these decisions. And so when the elementary school study was first released, several community members had made repeated attempts to address some concerns specific to the Shoreham Elementary School. Given the time constraint today for public comment, I'll just highlight two of those. One was paving, which the report assigned a value of $379,000. And the district doesn't actually own that road. It's owned by the town. And so I just don't think it's fair to put that financial responsibility in the report as if the district owned it. I'm also not clear on whether paving the gravel parking lot was part of the expense. And if so, it's unclear why that's an area of concern, since gravel parking lot certainly meets the need of providing parking spots. The second item is lighting. So the report identified lighting at a value of $239,000. At the time of the report, the lighting in Shoreham was 7 years old. It had been designed by Efficiency Vermont. There was even a question as to whether all the lights were on during the visit to the school. And based on the savings of 10 to 20% for replacing the entire lighting system, there would be a payback of 50 years. And so it just doesn't seem like that's really a justifiable expense to be carrying through. So these two costs, the paving and the lighting, total $600,000, and that represents 40% of the cost identified for Shoreham Elementary. And I bring this up again, both so new board members have this information, and then also just to reiterate that these concerns were never addressed or corrected. And as you all are, I'm here because I want what's best for the district. And I've spoken to the board and the community about Shoreham Elementary, as well as the 6th grade move, international baccalaureate, and a variety of other topics. And I bring this up because I think the perception is that myself and some other community members are only here for Shoreham Elementary, and that's all we care about. And it's just not the case. My son's going to soon move on to middle school and then the high school, and I do care what happens to the district as a whole. And going back to the report, it's just concerning that these significant expenses were never analyzed, discussed, corrected when community members continually brought forth their concerns. And now we see them coming back into play with escalations. So as we move forward and we have to make these really difficult decisions, I just think we really need to have the information that we base the decisions on be as accurate as possible. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, Tanya. Are there any other?
Hi, I'm Lauren Riggy. I live in Cornwall with my husband and my son. And my son goes to Cornwall Elementary. My husband before him went, and his father and mother before him. So we've been here a long time. And I'm here tonight to speak in support of changing the district charter. I commend the board for taking this up, especially for those board members who've expressed an open mind and reconsidered their positions over the last few turbulent years. As members of a consolidated district, every town deserves the right to vote on whether or not its school closes. This is why so many districts have these rights on the books. It's the right way to treat people, and it expands democracy at the most local level. I know some people think this is good in theory, but bad in practice. They worry it will give too much power to rural communities, but the board should trust its member towns to be responsible citizens. We care about the health of our district. We care about the education that kids get in different schools, and of course we care about the education our kids get in their schools, just like all of you. It's unhealthy for the board to have total control. It breeds deep and lasting resentment. It's undemocratic and unfair, and it pits rural communities against Middlebury, and even against each other. This divide has existed for a long time. But the simple fact is that some kids' schools will never close, and the rural ones are always on the chopping block. This is a vast inequity, a reality of the lived experience of being from small town Vermont. Instead, we should be giving voice to those who are underrepresented. We can do this by changing the charter. I'm not against consolidation, full stop. I live on land where there used to be a small schoolhouse, 1 of 4 or 5 in Cornwall, I think. So, of course, over time, some change makes sense. But those changes must happen collaboratively. Giving all schools a voice in the process forces us as a district to work together. Right now, a tiny minority of our community, the board, has all the power. That is also a vast inequity, and it is driving a wedge between all of us. The board should choose to truly value each of its communities, member communities. It should level the playing field in our district by giving all towns the right to vote on how their schools are sustained. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see a Zoom hand. If you care to make a public comment and you're on Zoom, please raise your Zoom hand. All right, without seeing any, let's move on. Can I get a recommendation or a motion to approve the minutes of September 26th? Joanna, second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Suzanne. Any questions, comments about the minutes? Seeing no questions or comments, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, thank you. Bills. Chip.
There were 3 payroll bills and 1 general bill that were read on the 3rd of October by myself, and I assume you always are. We're not doing it together, so I would have heard if they weren't. But in any case, first one is for $8,600. I can't even read it.
It's dark over there.
$864,205.21. The second was for $316.17. The third payroll is for $45.0544. And the general account was $597,187.91. The motion that we accept and pay the bills.
I'll second that.
Any questions about the bills? No questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, let's pay the bills. And now, the Bridgeport School. One of our favorite things. I just have to say it's so nice to be here. I think a lot of us have been here individually in the last couple of years, but we haven't been here as one body in at least 3 years.
Yeah, 2019.
2019. So,
If I remember correctly, the sixth graders then kicked your butts at tic-tac-toe.
Right.
That's right.
And we had to like turn the camera off.
that tells me a lot about you, that's what you remember most.
And then everything stopped for 2 years and now we're here. I'm Matthew Brinkman. I am the luckiest person because I get to be the principal of Bridgeport Central School. Tonight I have our fifth graders with us, and they are going to talk, and our interventionist, Megan Teresnick. And we're going to talk tonight about what we're doing a little differently in school on Fridays this year at ACS.
Community. I am Hannah Carl, 5th grade, and I'm going to talk to you about Community Building Fridays. Every Friday we come together as a school community, and students in grades kindergarten to 5th grade work, play, and eat together from 11 o'clock until 1 o'clock. Some weeks we start with a community circle to connect with other students. Circles help us to listen, to listen to each other and get to know each other better. For the first 20 to 30 minutes, we read. Older students read to younger students, younger students read to older students. Hi there, I'm Lily. Our family style long lunch table. Lunches allow us to sit and talk with students we don't always get to see. Younger students may sit with older students may sit with other younger students. We are even learning public speaking by proposing a toast before each meal. We mean by toast, before the meal, we stand up and say whoever we want to get a toast from to come out and we say stuff back. After lunch, we have an extended recess. In addition to free play, there are crafts and other activities available to choose. 3, 2, 1. Meanwhile, the classroom teachers are working.
And because that's what you think, that's what we're doing. Just kidding. Hi, my name is Meg Teresnick. I am also the luckiest person in the entire world because I get to be the interventionist here at Bridgeport Central School. It's a place that I love to call home. These people are my family. They're amazing. And we have this beautiful gift every Friday of time. If you talk to any teacher about what they would wish if they could rub a magic lamp and then suddenly get 3 wishes, it'll probably be more coffee, more sleep, and time. We have so many amazing students. We have so many amazing teachers. And previously, we had little pockets of time where we could collaborate, which was wonderful, but it never seemed like enough. And Matthew was a genius and proposed a really awesome, fabulous way for our children to get more community building and our teachers to get more time. So we created, basically from the ground up, a 2-hour-long chunk of time where we decided that we were going to, instead of just saying, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and this, we decided to kind of just start from nothing and say, what do we want out of this time together? So what you see here is the product of that time that we had. And we talked about wanting to make sure that we have common language, wanting to make sure that we're looking at data. We have so many awesome data points. And so often we look at it and we don't get to do very much with it.
This gives us time to look at the data, to digest, and to talk all together. And since we're such a small school, it's beautiful because all of the teachers either have taught the kiddos in the past or will teach them in the future. And then at the top, we have our 4 main central tenets of what we want from our time together. And I definitely did not write it on my hand. I'm not about to read it off my hand. But I wanted to make sure I got it right. I'm not wearing glasses. Planning, obviously we need to make sure that we're planning and that we have our curriculum, really down pat, and that we're teaching in a creative and fun way. Learning together. One of the most amazing things that came out of this was that the teachers not only wanted to plan together, but they wanted to learn together. So we're going to be doing book studies, we're going to be reading articles. I took a week-long Morton Billingham, which is a style of teaching reading seminar, and I'm going to be able to teach my teachers that, thanks to this time. Problem solving, if we have different challenges that we're stuck on, we get to hive-minded together. We don't have to just work in silos. And then finally, connection. It sounds really silly, but a really beautiful part of this time that we have together is lunch. So often when you're a teacher, you literally shovel the food into your face like it's going to run away because you're either trying to send emails or you're going to help that kiddo. But we have a protected period of time during this that we get to connect with each other and we get to talk to each other not only as colleagues but as humans, and it really strengthens our bonds and our relationships together, which makes our work so much more meaningful. So I'm beyond grateful for this time and also hearing all of the wonderful, beautiful things that our kids are doing with their connection and their team building. It's a really special time and a really special place, and I'm forever grateful for it. All right, next.
So it's not perfect. Today at staff meeting, I've heard from a few parents concerns because it's not an academic 2 hours. And so today at staff meeting, I said, pretend you were arguing against it. How would you argue against it? And what we came up with is, it's 11 to 1, and then the kids come back on a Friday afternoon after just having a 40-minute recess. It's a tough time for the teachers from 1 to 2:30. So that's definitely a challenge. And I think that was the biggest one. The teachers said, in actuality, the 2 hours that would be lunch and recess anyway. So it's really only adding 15 minutes on either end from the normal recess time. But we talked about it today as a whole staff, and what we're going to do is, now that we're practicing restorative circles, we're going to end recess with restorative circles, do some breathing, and hopefully problem solve anything that happened at that recess so that the classroom teachers don't inherit a disagreement about tetherball, for example. So that's, and we'll get feedback throughout. It's over the course of the first 6 weeks of school. It's evolved quite a bit. It is no feat of genius. There's very little I can do to help the teachers in real life. When I saw that the schedule would allow for this, if I can provide them with 2 hours a week to work together, then that's something I can do. There's so much that we can't do, but we were able to do this. And so we've been focusing on the responsive classroom the first 6 weeks, and I wanted to give the kids a chance to talk about, we went on a field trip last week, and Bruce, that's the last slide, and if you want to say anything about where we went. Lemon Ferris Culture Park is the word you're thinking of. That was the statement point. So what did we do Thursday?
On Thursday, we went to Lemon Ferris Culture Park and to the apple orchard to pick some apples.
We ate a lot of apples. We went in our groups, so we break the whole school into 4 groups on the community building Fridays. If you're not supposed to say Fun Fridays. It's bad branding. Community building Friday. So the groups got to work together, and after 2 years of really not being able to do anything as a whole school, we decided collectively to put a big focus both in with our kids to make sure we have 3rd graders who have never really met some of our older kids. So we wanted to make sure we brought the whole community together, and the teachers have really been forced to work in silos or on Zoom, so giving them a chunk of time to work in person together is super important. So we're really proud of the first 6 weeks. I'm really proud of the students, all of them pre-K through 5th, and I'm no kidding, our teachers are knocking it out of the park. Like, Bridgeport is calm, it's focused, and it's just the kind of learning environment that I think the whole community should be proud of. So, do you have any questions for our kids or for me or for me?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. Thank you guys for presenting this. I really appreciate that. But this excites me. It really does. Having done a report, I have a special place in my heart with you guys.
I miss you too.
And I'm like thinking, what would you recommend to, say, another school like Shore or whatever?
I feel like we all have different schedules, and so like and we collaborate a lot at the administrative level.
Yeah.
This is just something that actually just came out, and I'm lucky. Kate Cunningham, who is a music teacher, is also part-time para here. So she is here on Friday afternoon, so that's a gift that you can't replicate necessarily.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of looking at what you have, and it took, this is my 4th year. So this is something we wanted to do, but it took a long time to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I think there's possibilities.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. Thank you.
Could one of the kids speak to, there was a picture and it looked like you had trays of, I want to say it was like colorful moss or something. What was that? What were you doing with it? Yeah.
It was this fake moss that we got to put on a piece of cardboard.
That's true, except for it wasn't fake moss. It just looked fake because it was
Colors.
Got it. And then what were you doing with it? Was it just like an art project?
It was a
Yeah.
Got
It was like crafts.
Got it. Cool. Anyone else have questions for Steve?
Not so much a question, but an observation. I came and visited last year, and I had the opportunity to sit in with your teachers, one of your groups of teachers during lunch. As a former teacher, what an amazing opportunity, and they really, really get a lot from that. So kudos to you for giving the teachers that time without students in the room.
I have a question about Restorative Circle.
Yeah.
And just wondering if there are highlights from that or anything you want to share with regard to Restorative Circle. I'm not very familiar with Restorative Circle.
Is there anything you guys want to know?
Or what is it?
It's for a bunch of people, all in a group. We have groups, 1 to 4. We have 4 groups split up and there's not a ton of so 3rd graders, it's all split up. And they all go in a circle and the group that I'm in, the teacher, Miss Amber, has a talking totem and passes it around and she tells a question and passes it around and then some people that pass, a bunch of people pass, they'll do it again. And she'll go around and see if anybody started it.
It is, Nicole Carter brought it to you her first year, and it's something we're doing at the administrative level, we're doing as a staff, and it's a way to get centered and grounded. It's a way to ask questions, and give people think time and make sure everybody's listening. So the talking piece, you can't talk unless you have it, and you can pass, you can participate fully, even if you don't speak, just by listening. So it helps with a lot of different learning modalities, and people can participate even if, as it evolves, it's going to give us a chance to process things collectively. So, obvious example is something that happens at recess that affects the whole community. How do we restore, and how does everybody feel about that, how that happened? And as a staff, I think it's hard to go on Monday afternoon from teaching to the bell rings, to the buses come, to let's talk about what we need to do for the next 2 weeks. So it really is 10 minutes to a half an hour of us just coming together and breathing so that we can do the work.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm just excited that they're back out in the community.
Thank you guys so much. It was really great to see you.
So I'll echo first before I start digging in here. It's great to be in schools again for our meetings. So I was really excited to drive out here, even though the sun was a bit blinding. It was. Sorry. It's beautiful.
But it was gorgeous.
It was gorgeous. Yes. Anyway, it's great. It's great to be throughout our district and meeting together, and look forward to doing this throughout the year. This is our first meeting since the big vote in Ripton, and I just wanted to start by saying how personally excited I am about the vote and about being whole again and back together again. I think it's been a long number of years, and I just wanted to share from my vantage what I'm really excited about moving forward together again, and looking forward to this budget development that we're beginning with Matt, who is leading the charge on that, and having clarity about what the future looks like. So it's I know in talking to folks throughout the community that it's been a highly, highly emotional experience for all of us, or many of us, and I'm hopeful as we move forward that we're going to continue to build on our successes and communicate, as we just heard from the students and the presentation around connection and community. I think the message that I've been sharing with staff and community around wellness and connection is really important, and I think on this level too, in terms of all of our towns and all of the students in our district, that is equally important and resonates as we emerge from some really challenging years and look ahead as the sun continues to shine. Not in our eyes, but on us and around us. So I just wanted to mention that. One of the things that's been one of the challenges of the start of this year, I think I mentioned previously that I think the overall energy has been much more positive. People have come to our schools with more capacity. I think students, staff, and community all are kind of buoyed up right now a little bit. One of our challenges has been sickness and staffing. So we still, last year, we had a lot, and you all who were in schools know that every day was like a jigsaw puzzle trying to figure out how we're going to cover this and cover that. I would say it's not quite as bad as it was last year, but it still continues. We continue to see a lot of absences. I know some of you in this room probably have the cold that's going around. COVID is still moving around. Obviously, we're responding to it a little bit differently, but that continues. So I'm hopeful that as we kind of move forward and some of these sicknesses start to kind of leave our community, that does change. I am looking at the data to kind of just get a sense of, and I was hoping to have it for tonight, but didn't get it for tonight, but kind of looking back 5 years to look at, like, at this point in time, in terms of student absences and staff absences, kind of where do we stand right now, just to get a sense of it. But my anecdotal feeling about it is that we're probably, if we compare this week to like 2019, we could be like double the number of absences. And I think that's reflected when you look at the number of staff that are out or the number of students who are out each day. So we'll continue to do what we can there. Later on in the agenda tonight, we're hopefully taking action to reform the negotiations committee to talk through a couple other contractual issues as we look at trying to stay competitive and make sure that we have enough staff. We've been down on custodial staff, we've been down on some of other support staff positions as well, so that's something that we're kind of struggling with in getting whole. We also, one other thing I want to mention, some of you may have seen this, but the SBAC, which we've talked about for a long time, the state just pivoted away from the SBAC, so we will not be doing the SBAC this year. We'll be doing an assessment from Cognia, is the company.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, and it's pretty short ramp to, so the assessment will be on the same timeline as the SBAC. And I think it's a long-term commitment from the state to move in this direction. That will be for math, ELA, and science. All three will be from Cognia. So we'll have more information as we get more information on that. We just found out last week, so that's kind of big news. That's what I've got on my report. The second part is going to be a secondary facilities report that Bruce is going to give. So I think I'm going to hand it over to you unless folks have questions for me.
And this is kind of it follows with what we just heard, right?
Yeah.
When I look at some of our schools, in particular, I show as a principal, also as a new staff, and with all the absences, I'm kind of nervous, you know, that it's creating a lot of stress, you know, for these people trying to shuffle everything because we don't have the paras, we don't have, you know, the people to fill those. And so my question is, what are we doing to really kind of build them up and maybe free up some time? That's why, you know, when I heard this, I was like, oh wow, this is like pretty awesome. Because it would just be heartbreaking because I think there is a really wonderful team there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just really, you know, think we need some support, you know, where they can have more time together and collaborate and support each other as a team.
Right.
And I was wondering what we could, you know, what is happening and what you're, you know, may already be doing to address that.
I mean, I think we talk a lot about that at the district level with administrators and kind of, I mentioned that focus on connection and wellness this year as our primary focus. So that is something that we're continually talking about at the district level for principals to then take to building. And I think as Matthew stated, at every school it looks a little bit different. In terms of time for staff, you know, that's a contractual thing too. So we have a contracted number of hours per week. There's a contracted number of hours of meeting time per month as well. The place that we're at the district level that we're pushing in on that is in professional development. Our focus on responsive classroom this year through all of our elementary schools is directly related to that. To connection, to work around both community connection, staff connection, and supporting really strong management, classroom management within classrooms. And building that kind of team approach within the classroom is I think one of the foundations of responsive classroom. So those are some of the things that we're doing.
Yeah. And
but there's no way around the fact that it's stressful.
Yeah, and so when I think about that, it's like, it's, you know, just in my own life, you know, when you're taking additional training that will ultimately help alleviate, maybe, you know, improve your skill sets to deal with stress and how you handle it, it can create more stress at the time.
Yeah.
Right? And so, you know, I kind of worry about that. And you know, maybe like during the pandemic, we kind of stopped doing some of the professional development. You know, we put some holds on some things. At some point, maybe that's something we have to look at it again, depending on the school and how people are doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to maintain a more simplistic view and not overdo, which is a tendency when you want to fix something.
Right.
Is let's throw 8 things at the system and hopefully all those things, they're all good things, but there's I think, especially right now, a few things done well is really important. Right. And that goes back to that stress and just having everybody feel good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Mary Heather?
I have a question, and it's not necessarily about what was contained in your superintendent's report, Peter, but Emily added all of us board members to, or asked all of us if we wanted to be added to, you know, all the school distribution lists. So we've been getting, you know, all the emails that come from all of our various schools And I noticed that Weybridge is not included in that, and I'm just wondering if that's, I don't know, like
I'm
a
actually not
choice,
sure
or
why.
whether,
Yeah.
it seemed like we got something from all the schools except Weybridge, and I'm just wondering what.
I imagine there might be a separate email listserv that's not from Power School, because I think Jasmine went in and added, she controls the Power School listservs, and so she can kind of add people. So when we have, someone gets a snow call at 4 in the morning and calls up and says, I don't have a kid in the school or something, she's the one who takes them out. So I can check with her to see kind of what might be happening there.
Okay. Yeah.
That's my guess is that
my
if I was problem solving it, I would say there's probably a separate listserv or something that's not the Power School listserv is possibly what's
So
happening.
are all the schools then not using the same email format?
They should be, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would just be interested in getting those of us who want to be on whatever Weybridge's list is, so that we can also see what's coming from. No.
Yeah, I
For their.
My name is a parent.
Yeah, I was a parent, but I actually noticed the same thing. Because today, I got a couple in a row, then I got one from Weybridge, and I was like, wait a minute, I didn't get this one twice. So I don't know why.
Okay.
We use s'mores, they use s'mores, is that what I remember?
Yeah, we transitioned to s'mores,
Yeah, so, it's weird.
Yeah. But that's not what, the issue is not s'mores.
No, I know.
No, I guess I just would like to make sure that the board members have an opportunity to see what is coming up from Weybridge as well.
Totally.
So, okay, thank you.
Peter?
I do have a question just on the written report. There was a sentence I didn't understand. It was in the part about IB at the high school. It says our first DP teachers meeting was held September 28th. We have purchased our students' work with the IB evaluator feedback from the IB. And
I think that sentence is just not quite working.
Grammatically correct.
the part about purchasing back student work documents.
Yeah, they wouldn't purchase the student work back. We send work away and then we receive it from the evaluator, the moderator, and then students have a sense of kind of where they are. So it's kind of how International Baccalaureate has a standard, because there's an incredible amount of grade variation, both classroom to classroom and state to state and school to school. So that's what they're referring to in that.
I just have one more question. That is, in this changeover from SBAC, which SBAC, correct me if I'm wrong, has always been sort of tied to the Common Core standards.
Yeah.
Does this represent kind of a shift away from Common Core as well, or has that already been going on for years anyway?
Not that it is not a transition away. I mean, I haven't seen anything explicitly stated that it's a transition away from Common Core.
Just a new tool.
Yeah.
So is that all we're doing, is just changing the tool and the results will?
The tool also has other options to do benchmarking and formative assessment as well. So I think one of the state's hopes is, especially for districts that don't have a coordinated curriculum, that struggle to create a system, that this tool will provide more for those without the capacity to do that.
So I'm presuming the state will put out more about the switch and more information on the tool, so if we go to their website, we can.
I would guess, so yeah.
Read up on assessment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Just one more quick question. I'm pretty sure it's similar to past numbers, but 22 students have been identified to pursuing the IB certificate. Is that pretty much the past couple of years? It's right around that number. Or how is it?
It's been around 30. Yeah.
But this is a smaller
And
class
it's a
than the
diploma,
last.
so the certificate is just what you get if you want to get credit for a course. You take the exam at the end of your senior year. And you
Got it.
get
So
credit,
that's
yeah.
a certificate. And with the diploma cohort, how many?
That's around 30. But I'm not sure what this current. My son is actually in the current one, but I can't remember the number.
Okay.
But it has has trended around 30.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think last year was like, it was just around 50 for both, something
Yep.
like that,
Yep.
for DP candidates plus certificate candidates. It's
Yep.
roughly 50 kids.
Yeah.
Bruce.
Close to half of the.
Yeah.
We good? All right, Bruce, you're on.
All right, let's talk facilities. So I didn't have secondary facilities reports broken out from the Truex report, so what came in the board pack had what the facilities committee had reviewed in May. And it's an abbreviated 9-school report. It's only 42 pages. The overall report's 500 pages. So I didn't think we had time tonight to go through this.
Bruce, is there a link to that 500 page?
I think we
There
tried
was.
to put something up. I don't know if
There
it
is one on the website.
functioned. There's one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
That you can
I-
access from facilities master planning stuff.
I know we had some problems with it, like crashing. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
You can't, like, you basically have to download it. So you can click the link and then it downloads. You can't just scroll through it on the website. It's just too large.
Two
Sorry.
person. No, that's fine. You're absolutely right. So this abbreviated version has all the schools on it. But tonight we're just going to look at high school and middle school. And so the high school, you have on this summary, it gives you years of major construction phases. So in 55, the original building was constructed. In 66, they added the H-wing, and then in 70, they put a pitched roof on the H-wing. In 91, they did a bunch of renovations to the front of the building, so the cafeteria, and put on a Butler roof system, which is a low-slope metal roof that covers a good portion of the building still. And then in 97 was our last major renovation. That's when they went through and updated many of the electrical systems. They replaced a good number of windows, built the band room, enclosed the walkways that went between the wings. It was originally it was several separate buildings. To begin with, the Career Center was not attached to the high school. The E-wing and the D-wing were not attached to the main building with the cafeteria and gymnasium and auditorium. So it's been married together in a lot of different ways over the years. And that brings us to where we are now. So the last major renovation being about 25 years ago. Many of the systems that are in place are at the end of their projected life. Most HVAC systems and lighting, many types of flooring, all that has about a 20-year predicted lifespan. So, and we've done a pretty good job of maintaining things, but it still wears out. You drive your car for 20 years, you maintain it well, it's still gonna, a lot of it's going to wear out on it. So this report takes a more in-depth view than the report from School Dude that we had, and we looked a little closer at systems. So it's still not exhaustive, and it still shouldn't be, used as a budgeting tool. It gives you a ballpark kind of idea, but if we're going to move forward with projects, once we decide as a community what to do, we'll need to re-examine things, especially in light of the pandemic, labor shortages, material delays. It's really affected pricing and availability on a lot of things. Even with this high school, middle school report that was done essentially during the pandemic, prices have escalated quite a bit over the numbers they gave us back in May. So, middle school, I think everybody on this board probably thinks of the middle school as a brand new school. And it is one of the newest, or is the newest school in our district. And even with that said, we're at the 20-plus year mark for systems. And so when we look at this slide, you can see, looking across, that you know, the renovation costs are estimated from this report at $18 million. You know, and that just seems like a huge number. But once you start looking at the things that are included in that number, you know, it's a lighting update. And if you go into a room and you take down the lights that are there and go to put up new lights, 9 times out of 10, you're going to damage the ceiling beyond repair, and you'll have to replace the ceiling grid and the tiles at that same time. So what happens is you get systems that are woven together, kind of, and as soon as you start working on one, you end up having to work on other things. And so this number kind of represents that web of work that would end up taking place should we move forward with renovations. So the high school is, this number on the first slide says 193,000 square feet. That includes the Career Center number. It is broken out further down in the report. You know, the student count, I think we're still pretty close to that. You know, the 305 parking spaces. If the town of Middlebury realigns Charles Ave, that might go down a little bit. That is something else that's out in the wings.
Really?
So we have, and we've discussed this at the facilities meeting, but we have a lot of different things at the high school that account for their renovation number, which was 61 million. And it ranges from outdated HVAC systems, majority of the building with relatively no insulation. We have failing infrastructure such as plumbing. We have you know, sewer lines underneath the slab that are decaying. Hopefully we'll address you know, the area of the kitchen. Thank you. You and the community approved doing the kitchen project, and we're well into the design phase on that. And next summer that will be addressed. And, some of those pipes that we know are broken will be repaired. So let's see. This is, I'm sure you all had a chance to look at this, but I don't know as if anybody else outside of the board has. Provided a nice little diagram here of the building, color-coded with the years of construction, which might be helpful to understand how it goes together. Yes, they did provide, it's on this board. They give us the facility condition index. Yes, they did. Okay. So we have down under the summary. they included a facility condition index. And for people who are not familiar with that, that takes the cost of renovations and compares them to the cost of replacement and tells you how much of your asset you've used up. So that number under FCI Note 5, that's how much of each building has been used up based on the work it needs and what it would cost to replace it. And industry standard is once you get over 70% of buildings use, then you should consider replacement. It's not necessarily an educational number. That's just in a professional engineering building sort of way. The facility condition index indicates it's time to replace your asset when you hit 70%. So when we look at the high school, we're well beyond that number, and middle school we're still under 50%. So you can expect to get a lot more use out of it. So I think if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to dive into this. Heather.
Do you have any specificity about the ADA compliance and code issues at both Moms and the high school, obviously, but both of those buildings?
Yes, when we go into the 500-page report, it calls out those issues. In ADA, we're relatively compliant in both buildings. Did they break it out in this report how much? Typically, if it's an ADA issue, you end up having to either rearrange walls or doors and things. So it could be a small amount of work, but still cost a lot. And as I recall, we didn't have a huge amount of ADA problems. Let me see it right here. I didn't bring my glasses to read this report.
My glasses. So does the I can't remember the specifics, but is there like a line item for that in the web report?
See, I'm just looking to see if they broke it out as its own category. Regulatory, environmental, site work.
It's like building code and ADA issues is the third bullet point on your picture with the.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
wondering, take your slide with the pictures for the high school. I don't see it on the middle school.
Okay. Yeah, we shouldn't have had any at the middle school. That was moving up construction. So that was no.
It was building code and ADA issues was the third bullet point.
Okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah, there.
Okay, the building code, now that is a pretty good sized category. So code issues, like the middle school is, as we sit, we're code compliant because we're grandfathered in. But if we go to do these renovations that are in the report, then we will have to bring things up to current building code. And we have a pretty good list of non-compliant codes that we were, in 1998 we were fine, 97, 98 that was not in the code, and now the codes have been updated. And actually in the middle school, I remember seeing a note that they did not include any insulation numbers, but that is, it's not code compliant for insulation because it wasn't required to be as well insulated 25 years ago. But there are other things like the sinks that they put in the classrooms and such in 1998, 97. we weren't required to make those ADA accessible. So there's your ADA question. Is everywhere that there's a sink in a classroom right now has a cabinet underneath it. And to be compliant, you can't have a cabinet underneath it, and it needs to be the right height so you can roll up to it with a wheelchair. And so all of those would have to be updated. We don't have to do it right now because we haven't done anything to the building. As soon as we start working on the building, we'll have to make those updates. Yes, pulling the permit triggers.
Kills the grandfather.
Yep, that kills the grandfather clause.
Thank you. Thanks, Bruce. What status or like quality does this bring the school up to if you make all the renovations? Is the school like, are you good to go for a while? Is the number effectively zero that you have to, or like how do you estimate the quality of the building then?
Yes, so if we were to do everything in the report, it would bring the building up to today's code. So you'd have code compliant lighting and heating, finishes. So any floors that were worn through or worn out, it would get replaced. They would paint the whole building. If the siding needed to be replaced, they would replace the siding. So yes, you're essentially bringing the building back up to as close to new as you can.
Okay.
One of the things that the facilities committee talked about was looking at these two numbers, 61 and 70, are awfully close.
Right.
So, 61 to, essentially keep the high school as it is and fix all these things, and building a new building would be 70. It just, kind of like a conversation point to think about.
Right.
If the decision was to go full bore on all of the things on that list, and I think that's kind of continuing work to do, that I think Jen and the committee are going to bring to a future meeting is having a conversation about what would the scope be of a project, because as we look at K-12, that number is astronomical when you add up all the work that needs to be done. So it is going to have to be strategic and targeted, and the question is, how far to go and how much to invest now versus investing in 10 years, and where.
Right. Point being that it doesn't bring it necessarily to 21st century learning standards, it just brings it to code. Steve?
Just really quick, I know that they haven't gotten back to you yet about the PCB stuff. Could that have a major impact on us, because we don't know of any money yet that's going to be there to ameliorate that? And I assume that it's kind of like asbestos. You start working in the school, you got to fix whatever they find. Do we have I'm not asking you to commit to anything right now, but high school, I think, is one of those buildings that could be in that range where they find PCBs.
Yeah, PCB testing has begun. It hasn't begun in our district. We were slated to actually have this building tested in July, but they've had, the state's had difficulty hiring a program director and getting things rolling, and so they're not on their timeline. That was their timeline, not ours. So PCBs have the potential of adding expense, if they're found, definitely. In the high school and middle school, the middle school wouldn't be subject to that because of its construction date. In the high school, because it's gone through a couple of major renovations post PCB production, is seen as a lower risk. The lighting's been all updated, and PCBs and ballast was a big contributor. A lot of the materials that PCBs are in may get taken out during renovation, and so really the 97 renovation we did touched a lot of areas in the school. So I think and you can tell by the date they pushed the high school out to for their testing, it wasn't immediate. So they didn't feel it was as much of a risk. Certainly, there's the potential that there's the PCBs there that nobody was aware of, and once they are discovered, yes, we have to deal with them. And the state does not have a fund set aside to date to deal with PCBs.
They're 32 million.
32. Okay.
Isn't that for just that's for the testing too, I thought? I don't think it was just for the...
I'm not, I mean, Peter was part of that.
I don't know what the numbers. There is a small fund that the rules of which have yet to be even worked out as to how it gets distributed.
Yeah.
Chip.
I think we have to put it all in perspective. The first thing after unification this new board or district did was to look at the school, what do you call it, the early edition of looking at facilities. Can't think of it. What was it
Monkey.
called?
Oh, the school dude.
School dude, okay. And that was to give us a 30,000 view look at what our facilities were and what it needed. And when we got to the point of looking at where we were as far as how close we were to the threshold and how our budgets were going to have to be and the declining enrollment, then we went on to this facilities master plan, okay? Obviously, you talked tonight about just that second half of that. And so this is a relative type of thing. And I think per the comment earlier in the public comment about, things on gravel versus paved roads and things like that, we were nowhere near making those distinctions and trying to decide what we do with each facility by that type of detail. But it does give us a perspective. And it's pretty alarming, but I guarantee you that every other district in this state that would do the same thing would be in the same position. And so this state has not built a new school 20-something years, right? I mean, it's pretty close to it. So, and any of those that have come up have been voted down. So I think the reality is, this is really helpful, it's eye-opening, but until we have to sort of go what direction we're going to do, we're not going to build a high school bus. Come on, I don't care what the number says, Peter. That ain't going to happen.
It was going to be called the cheap
I know that, but I meant those are the kinds of, if we're talking about that, the PCB thing does concern me because we have a number of older schools in the district that may be affected. But I just look at this as a big picture thing, and until we decide how we as a district are going to deal in a big way with all of our facilities scattered across this district, there's nothing more we can look at this as a guidepost and say, there are benefits because we have some newer schools and we have some that are going to need lots of work if we start to do anything. So. All right, I don't want to get in too much in the weeds on this until we have a lot of other stuff decided.
Right. All right, one last comment, and then we've got Emma is waiting for us.
So Victoria, after the last comment, I guess the facilities committee needs some direction. So I guess, can I just ask for a little bit of direction?
Right, I was going to say that this tonight we asked Bruce to come just to sort of start everybody looking at the study, looking at the numbers, having an understanding of what the work has been, what the work that has been done is. Because at some point we're going to begin the conversation about bonding and whether we want to do that and how we would do it and what would the bond be paying for. So this really was just to get everybody sort of looking at the same data and comfortable with it so that when those discussions begin, it's not brand new and nobody's surprised. We're going to have time to stew on it and ask questions and that sort of thing. But yes, we will. Okay, Barb.
Okay. Yep.
And then Jen.
Yep. And so, just for folks to now go back, now that they've gotten the 1,000-foot view of the presentation, if you go to the detailed report and download it, starting for the high school, for example, starting on page 86, there is table that spans 3 pages that really breaks it down in detail. And the ADA doesn't look like it's spelled out separate, Mary Heather. It looks like it's intersprinkled. The code stuff looked like it was kind of grouped together in some way. But it breaks it down like in the past, priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, which obviously we'll ultimately need to take a look at. And you can see the totals based on priority as well in those tables. So there's a detailed table, not only for the high school, but also for months as well. So just to let the community as well as the board know that there's definitely much more detail within the report, and probably a good place to start is that table, as opposed to reading the 85 pages prior to that table.
Thanks for the warning. That's a very good point. I think, Jen, to your point about asking the board for direction, I think that I think what we've presented tonight doesn't give the board the information they need to sort of give the facilities committee guidance. I think that will come, probably not the next meeting, but the meeting after that. We'll have time for facilities committee to sort of lead that discussion as to which, sort of looking for guidance and what questions we want to ask the board.
So you're anticipating a month from now the facilities committee would present some options or lead a discussion about
I think
which
so.
options?
I think probably at our next board meeting we'll have the ad hoc committee will take up quite a bit of time, and so I'm guessing that the meeting following that will be the meeting that we have time to sort of dive into that.
Okay. So I guess in the meantime, if board members dive into the data and have thoughts or questions or concerns, I guess you can send them our way so we would at least have some guidance as far as what we might still need to hear about facilities-wise. Yeah. Then maybe the facilities committee can at least meet to kind of think through good options for sharing more out. Okay, thank you.
Remember, it took 42 years to enclose the outdoor walkways at our high school.
Well, let's aim for a little less than 42 years to make a decision.
Even if you half it.
All right, so if you look at the agenda, we've got report of the board next. I'm going to flip-flop and bring number 2, make that number 1, because we should have Emma waiting to be let in. There she is. So if that's all right with everyone, we'll go on, we'll do the strategic plan development with Emma, and then we will have a conversation about the policies.
Before we leave reported superintendent, can I just quickly also mention that Heather Crowley, our executive assistant to the superintendent, is here. So I just wanted to
Hello. Isn't this fun?
So fun. Thank you. You want to do it all the time, right?
Hi, Emma. Thank you for your patience.
You're actually running kind of on time.
Yeah, kind of.
So I'm very impressed with you all and your implementation, which is very exciting.
Yes.
And just to let you all know, Heather's been doing a fabulous job of supporting the strategic planning work and logistics. So since she's there in person, Heather, thank you for all your support with this process. Takes a team. Well, hello everyone. Hopefully everyone received the 2-page clean version, if you will, that was the latest work of the working group from last week. It's 2 pages because we've been able to really consolidate and streamline language so that it's nice and clear about where I hope we'll get tonight in terms of a final product ready to be passed on to the action team. Before we dive into the document, I thought I would just clarify, probably a reminder, but for folks who might be in the audience tonight or watching at home, a clarification on how these strategic planning components will be used in the upcoming months. So I just first want to say that all of the different pieces the board has worked on can be, of course, included in a final written document. It can be shared with the action teams or the community But you may decide that, and we might decide collectively, there might be a couple of pieces in here, for example, the list of values that we started using, that might be just more tools that were used along the process to get you to the place of setting goals that may or may not really be useful for the final document you choose to put out to the community. And that's okay. Really what we're trying to do is document the whole process along the way, excuse me, and provide clarity for you and folks who are going to take pieces of this work going forward about what was the generative process, what helped you get to the place of setting the goals. The next piece ahead is the action teams. I've mentioned that a couple times. So they will take the goals from today. Was there someone talking? No. Just that owl picking up all the audio. Okay, great. If someone needs me to pause, let me know. Otherwise, I'll continue with my little overview here. So the action teams will take primarily the goals, mission, vision, statements, and the equity definition to really inform their work. That doesn't mean they'll ignore the rest of it, but those are probably the most pertinent pieces of the work you've collectively brought to the table so far to inform their work as they go forward and start working on the objectives, strategies, and the tasking that will advance these goals over the course of the next 5 years. They'll also be encouraged to use, if you might remember the acronym SMARTY, when we did our first session for your board retreat, and that SMARTY acronym helps people kind of really make sure that what they're putting in terms of objectives and strategies are measurable, achievable, inclusive, equitable. I'm not doing all the SMARTY letters, but you get the idea that they're really bringing some of the themes you've started to work on through their work through the action teams. You as a board, even if tonight is the last kind of formal piece of your piece of the work right now, I hope that you'll continue to use this document, especially the theory of action statements and the equity definition in your work. I mean, there's no reason not to start really thinking about how these apply to the work. I heard at the tail end of this facility report, to really be thinking about how this applies, because these are both the theory of action and the equity definition are really designed to be thought tools to help you make decisions as a school board and really start to really move you towards those three goals over the course of the 5 years. So again, no reason not to use them as you have them. And then finally, after today, there'll be community meetings scheduled in November, most likely. I'll meet with Emily tomorrow and Peter, I think. The action teams will form, and then eventually the board will get a final work product, probably in March or April, sometime of that time frame, early next spring, to look at all the work that the action teams have put together under these three goals, and you have one final discussion and approval so that the formality of the plan is done, and you are ready to go forth and do good things for all your students and staff. So are there any questions on that overview first before we get into the 2-page document and where we are?
I guess I have
Mary Heather.
Yeah, thanks again for the recap. It's definitely helping my note taking. I do have a question about the community engagement part that is anticipated for November, and I'm just thinking with the community engagement committee's hat on. To what extent is that being led by Emily and central office team with you versus how much we need to take on as a committee? I'm just curious how that division of labor will look.
Yeah, it's a great question. At minimum, it's going to be a collaboration. That's what Emily and I are going to dive into a bit more tomorrow, because I know you do have forgive me if I get the title wrong, but the community engagement committee of the board, right? That you're the chair of. So absolutely a collaboration. I imagine that we were thinking about 2 of them, and I would imagine that even if I don't formally facilitate them, you would get a lot of coaching and help with design of the agenda and how we outreach and making sure working backwards, there's plenty of notice to the community so folks know what they're coming to talk about, and also know how to provide feedback and where that would go. Again, these are all components that are going to be passed to the action teams, so we want to make sure we're sequencing them so that the community meetings happen right as the action teams are starting to organize, so it's all relevant and sort of sequencing in the right way. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Barb?
Yeah, just clarification from my part. So the community meetings or presentations, they're going to then look at this document and then further critique it or provide input on it, or they're taking it another step. I'm not quite positive where we're headed.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, as you all know, there was real intention, it was intentional to really front-end community input in this process of your advisory committee ahead of time, and now the board has formalized, sort of formally, especially the 3 goals in particular, the 3 goals and perhaps the equity definition, vision, mission statement. I think those would be the primary focus to get some community dialogue about, just to make sure that, you know, that a couple things. One, that nothing is missing, that these hit the right tones, these 3 big areas around school, community, facilities and resources, and the learning environment. Those titles are changeable, of course, but those are kind of the categories for the 3 goals. And that there's a chance, just one more time, for the community to have some input before some more in-depth work happens within those goals. If something, I would say, after those meetings, if something is glaringly missing, then we might regroup, of course. But I think most importantly, it's time for the community to get caught up and have some dialogue around where this last piece and where the board got the pieces of the strategic plan.
Join us, Edward.
Yeah, just a question about process, and as I'm thinking about it, it feels like it's a game of telephone, like it's been through a bunch of iterations. Is there would you ever consider bringing it full circle back to that initial community team that, I don't even know what it was called.
The advisory committee.
The advisory committee, to make sure that what's here is reflected, and what, like, could that potentially be? I'm just curious to see if it is, if they would support this too, because they started with it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So a couple things about sort of the continuity of that all. So Peter, Emily, and I have been involved in all those steps along the way, and for these action teams, there's a few spots we were thinking around the teams. So again, we're refining this still, but there's a few spots on each action team we're hoping to open back up to the school community for students to be involved and parents or caregivers. And so there might be some folks who from the advisory committee continue on. We also would make sure that they were invited. It was sort of the original thought that they would have maybe some role in the community meetings, to at least come and sort of help be recognized for all their leadership and work that they've put into it, and sort of keep them up to date. I've been waiting on sending them a final version of what you all have been working on over the last month or so. But that was, I mean, just for me, I think process is really important in honoring people's work. So I was going to share this back out with the committee. But that's as far as we got. But if you have more ideas, feel free to let me know. And as I said, Emily and I are meeting more tomorrow to start thinking more deeply on it.
All right, I think that's all our questions from here.
Okay, all right, let's go into, you okay, Victoria?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, I don't know what's going on.
I fly like that.
Wait, there's some
fly in my face.
I was almost a casualty.
I don't think you all get workers' comp, so be careful. I know you qualify. Okay. So people have the 2-pager. What I'm planning to do is sort of just talk you through the changes and pause, and much like we did the last board meeting, I think only a couple sections probably need more in-depth discussion, if at all. I want to also just thank the folks who were part of the last working group meeting. We got pretty far, I think, really just making sure that no major concepts are missing and there was consistency and whatnot. So thank you to those folks who were able to meet last week. So first, values. You'll see the latest version has added 4 more values just to help really round out all the corners. Those 4 we're adding the concepts of involvement, responsibility, sustainability, and financial stewardship. So those were added up top. We didn't have a whole lot of discussion in the working group one way or the other. That was just sort of making sure we were being not consistent, but being complete and finishing all the thoughts that we generated back at the board retreat. And just, from values throughout the whole document, we discussed making sure that values really reflect consistently in each of the sections. So I made sure to go back through and make sure, as much as it made sense, that those value statements are reflected in the sentences and the concepts that are in each of the sections. So before I move off of the values, though, and jump into core beliefs, are there any concerns or questions about the 4 new ones, or things that people still feel are missing and are important to document in your board values words?
I think it looks good.
All right, great, moving on. Core beliefs. So in this section, and we also purposely took numbering out because numbers can sometimes give an indirect, even if it's not conscious, effort that somehow these are ranked in any particular order. We did consciously order them to sort of to basically start from students. So starting always talking with your students and then working through the list to sort of zoom out, if you will, to the larger community. But we took numbers off just so folks didn't think that, you know, if whatever happened to be at the bottom of the list was less valuable for any particular reason. So under core beliefs, you'll see the order is purposeful now. You'll see that we've consolidated a couple of the beliefs that were in the last draft. We were consistent with the values in here, and there are two new, if you will, concepts that were added from your last board meeting, and that was, well, I'm going to number it because it's just easier to reference, the third bullet, to make sure that we state the collective responsibility to support students' social and emotional well-being is among the community, families, and partner organizations. You'll see that one. We discussed that a lot on September 26th, so that's clearly stated in beliefs here. And there was one more new one that was added as of the last board meeting, but the working group, and when I was looking at trying to apply ensuring values, the values of responsibility, financial stewardship, and sustainability were incorporated everywhere. We'll see the very last core belief is new, well, a new sentence in the last one that says the school board is responsible for being fiscal stewards of public resources and finding sustainable ways to support the goals of the district. It wasn't really there in the belief, so we wanted to make sure that got pulled in. So I'm going to pause. That's what's new in the core belief section, and just see, especially those couple new concepts, if that works, or if there's something still missing or something that needs to be added or changed.
I appreciate the adding of the two that you brought up, which was the working with well, the public education piece, because I felt that was something we really need to focus on, and also the working with other partners to get the social emotional pieces taken care of. We can't just hope that they'll be part of it, but that we will work with them. So I think you've done a great job on this list.
Thank you. I think having you all be clear and what you start to share with the community really sends the right message around the partnership needed. Certainly I've seen it up in my own school district. The social emotional needs of students is widespread, and really setting forth that vision that we really need a community collaboration on this. Right. I think it's important to have that reflected as much as possible. And you'll see that in the action team design as well, about bringing community partners in to help really think through the goal that starts to touch on that area. Thank you. Thank you. Any other thoughts, questions? I must be like 1,000 feet high, but I must be on a very large. This is me. I'm a Leo. I'm totally fine with it. Yeah. Oh no, that's all right. Okay, Victoria, are we good to move on?
Yep. Looks like we're good to move on.
All right. Excellent. Okay, moving right along. So the next section was the equity definition. So here we did a lot of sentence sort of restructuring to make sure it reads plainly and cleanly, because the whole mission here, as you might recall, you all know that you have an equity policy of the board, C29, and we wanted to make sure that the point of even having this definition is not to replace that policy, but to instead have a brief, well, as brief as one can be around equity, a clearer, shorter statement that can be used by your action team, understood by the community, and so that this district knows what it means when you say equity, which, believe me, if people have probably as many different definitions of equity as there are people, so having a plain language, easy to understand definition was the goal here. We did not change any concepts besides just noting that you have a policy at the very final sentence if people wanted to read more, but this is really just cleaned up definitions so that it would read well and clearly. So, thoughts? Feedback?
Question?
Brian.
What does it mean by universally designed?
So that is an academic phrase. Peter, do you want to take that one?
Sure, yeah. Universal design means it's not a curriculum or something that's designed for one type of learners. Universal design is looking at the whole learner, but it's looking at all learners. So it's getting away from, you know, like the traditional approach to teaching was you prepare a lesson, you give the lesson, and you hope all the students get it. Universal Design for Learning is about looking at where you're going and then backwards mapping and making sure that how you're designing is going to work for every student in the classroom, given who they are, what they bring to the classroom, their learning style, etc. So it's a more inclusive, it's thinking differently about, you know, I think from the teaching side, the expectation isn't I'm going to prepare and I'm going to give this lesson and you know, some students will get it, some won't, but it's more about making sure your goal is to make sure every student gets over the finish line.
Yeah, was the intent to have the websites underlined blue? Is that a hypertext link?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not working in what was loaded up.
I think
Maybe
it's
lost
WordPad.
the links.
Yeah, I think there's
It's probably WordPad.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Barb?
Yeah, and with the universally designed, I get, and this is more implementation, so I shouldn't even ask the question probably. I'm thinking that we have a gap between where we are now and where we need to be as far as our lessons at that time. Just from my brief experience, I've had subbing where it didn't feel universally designed. So is that true?
I mean, that is, I think, one of the last 2 years that's been a main focus at the high school and middle school has been UDL. It's the acronym, Universal Design for Learning. So we are committed to it. We are learning about it. We have a lot of professional development on it. And we're, you know, I think we're in a state of becoming in terms of realizing it, but it's not, it's a constant practice. You don't, it's an approach, right, to design. But in terms of the actual implementation, you know, it's that state of continuous improvement.
Jamie.
I mean, I hate to that dead horse thing, but does it sound buzzwordy? Buzz? Is it like inside baseball to people who just read this that phrase universally designed, or is it because you know that was the whole thing of like clarity, and which I thank you, I agree. Does this fall into that category?
Yes.
Too inside to say.
I just will add that design did come up in the advisory committee's discussions. So just again, going back to honor the work that's been done leading up to this, I forget who mentioned, you know, involving the advisory committee again. So a lot of what we've tried to kind of leave in around high quality, we swapped out that word for, what was the word we used before? That's rigorous, I think. It's just trying to really be reflective of just where you've been in this whole discussion. So universal design came up just around making sure that all learners were able to feel successful and as essential. Now, if that term feels to edu-speak, which is something that that is a phrase that just literally sounds as confusing as it is, right? It's just educators would understand it. We could swap it out, but I think the concept is one that is important because it speaks to reaching all students and meeting students' needs. You can work on that word if there's nods around the table that feels a little too inaccessible for folks.
I would.
Yeah, I
mean, I know what it means, but not everyone does.
Yeah.
I think the second sentence does a good job.
I agree.
Yep.
Yeah, it sort
Just
of
the
almost
following-
defines it.
sorry, the following
Right.
sentence.
Okay.
Also, it is,
Yeah.
you have to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
It's an undefined pronoun.
All right, other comments or questions around the definition of equity? I'm not seeing any.
Okay, here we go. Ready, page 2? Okay. Mission and vision statement. This had probably the least amount of changes, as the working group will recall. We really just cleaned up the end of the sentence for the vision statement to clarify, to enrich our community and communities where they live in the future. That was really just to clarify your students some might stay in your immediate communities and some might move on to other parts of the big bright world, and we wanted to just acknowledge that piece. So that is simply the only change in this section. Are there any questions or feedback on this one?
I'm seeing none.
All right. Wow, I'm very impressed. Well, I think this also shows, frankly, how much thought has been put into this between the working groups and between meetings and what you've done so far. So this is affirming. We're getting close. All right. Theory of action statement. So a couple things on this. Again, there was an attempt to consolidate one that sort of spoke to similar themes, some clarity on the wording. The order is, again, done intentionally to start from students, work to staff, work to families, work to community. So that, again, not in a ranking order, but more just on a start where the students are first in these lists. And then finally, there was a new one added, again, with the concept of speaking to the sustainability and responsibility and fiscal stewardship. And so that's the last bullet, which reads, if ACSD uses public resources in sustainable and responsible ways to operate our school system, then our community will benefit. And just a quick reminder, this is a theory of action statement, which is an if-then structure on purpose to really be a theory that if you are doing the first part of the phrase, then the second part will come to fruition, if you will. It will happen. So any questions or feedback on the theory of action statement?
Yes. I don't believe the first statement. If students receive an education that builds on their experiences, then they will demonstrate excitement to learn. I don't think that's true. And I'd like to see some proof of that.
Do you have a different suggestion? Our first one was to attempt to speak to students and getting them to be passionate to learn. So maybe it's phrasing, but I'm just curious if you have another approach.
It is unclear to me what those experiences are supposed to be. If they're human social experiences, there are many individuals who will not be excited about those and learn. If it's about what they're being taught, those are the experiences that maybe will excite them. But as this statement stands, I don't think it's true.
I somewhat.
When we were building, I'm sorry. Yep. Yeah, there's other hands. Go ahead.
I somewhat agree with Brian on that one a little bit. I think it's not clear. I know what it's trying to say, but I think I agree. I just don't want to say it this way because it's sort of like the world that we took out. I mean, it was too big to.
What if we change the first part to find success? Like if a student finds success, then they will demonstrate excitement to learn. Like find success in school or something like that. Like what if we just change that first part to like the positive experience?
Well, and that's a good suggestion because in fact, we talk about that all the time in relationship to extracurricular. If someone is not finding success in the classroom and they find success in the theater or on the athletic field, that may generate them to be more successful in their learning. And in fact, we can prove that's the case. But Brian, I think you're right on this. I don't, this one is.
Peter?
Well, I think, if we go with sort of, building on their success, it's kind of too obvious, if you ask me. But I would say, really, what this is trying to say is that if students receive an education that builds on their interests or their, and that's kind of what it's trying to get at, is that you are creating an education that they can identify with.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, what do people think of interest versus experience?
Well, also I'm thinking, to some degree, it's about meeting students where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe it's interests and abilities or something where we're kind of describing that if we're meeting students where they're at and they're having success with that, then they're more likely to have excitement, to feel, kind of caught by the hook.
Yeah.
So maybe something about interests and abilities or that, I don't know if we want to say meets them where they're at, or if we just say that builds on their interests and abilities, but something that kind of captures, I don't know, Barb, maybe you're.
No, I agree with you, because it's, one without the other doesn't work for me, because interest is one thing, but it also has to be geared to what their abilities are as well. And otherwise, they can still be really frustrated and have a lack of excitement about learning. And maybe it isn't necessarily excitement, but it's success, right? Yeah. What is the cause and effect here?
Right.
Right.
So if students receive an education that builds on their interests and abilities, then they will demonstrate success in learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds better.
Yeah. Because what does excitement really mean, right?
And
more success, you can start to frame it.
Yeah, I'm hearing all this, and this bullet was really in the spirit of different pathways to learning, which I know you probably all dealt with at some point as the state has sort of moved in that direction to just encourage more opportunities, and just experiences are important for students to be able to learn, whatever that might be. It might be, as we've talked, I think, in the advisory committee over those months, some students in your communities have a real attachment to agriculture, right, and farming, and a lot of learning can happen there around science and nature and all of that, sustainability practices, right? And so that's really the essence of this. Is I appreciate the wording changes to make sure that there's room for abilities, interests, success, and learning. I'm hearing all those phrases. So happy to take another go at that first bullet. I think I got what you're laying out on this one. So is there anything else in the other statements of theory of action that you would like to mention?
I'm seeing none.
This is so exciting. We're on the final section. All right. Just contain your excitement, everyone. To you. Okay. The goals. There are 3 goals. So again, there was no major changes in concepts here. This was work on clarity of the wording, primarily by your working group last week. So again, the themes of these 3 goals are school community, and the school community holds 2 concepts within there around safety, a sense of belonging, feeling included in the school district, and then engagement with your families and students. So there's kind of 2 concepts around the school community one. The second one is around resources and the facilities, and being fiscal stewards and making sure you have equitable practices across the district for those resources and facilities. And then the final one, of course, because you are a school district, is the learning environment. We did not order these in any particular order since there's only 3, but if that felt like an important piece, obviously we could reorder three goals. That's very easy to do. But those are the 3 goals. So are any pieces of feedback on these final goals?
Yes,
Brian.
I have a thought. Was it the intent of saying invaluable ways to be vague or uncertain, or waiting until later to spell out what those ways might be? I don't know what valuable ways mean, but I'm sure that parents would ask, what are you talking about?
Sure. So this was the sentence that was attempting, for all these goal statements, the whole intention of a goal is to stay at the 10,000 foot level, and then the action teams really put in the how. How will you be addressing, engaging with or helping your family sisters engage with the school system? And this was an attempt to not get too much in the weeds, but to really acknowledge that the district can do more, and try more in the sense of trying to do things that would really bring all your families into the district, into the schools in ways that they feel like they can truly engage, to make sure their students were, that they are in the loop about what their students are doing, etc. And I think what the advisory committee, again, learned along the way, of having attention to things like language access, having attention to concise and clear language, which is not a theme in our whole discussion. That's a big piece of it. So I think that was what valuable ways we're trying to capture. Keep it simple, but also make sure it's value add to the families, but also value add to the school system, so that people know what their kids are doing in the district.
So in other words,
and Brian, do you have another? Oh, sorry, Brian. Is that you?
No, I think what you're saying is that later on, in order to reach those goals, somebody will mention what these valuable ways might be. Correct?
Yes, exactly. The how and the details are coming, and on all three of these. So you might have a similar question on what does equitable, what does equitable, sustainable, and fiscal responsible ways, what does that mean for goal 2? And that is really the charge of the action teams to get into the details. The board, these attempts, well, these goals are the board setting the direction. The final destination on your GPS here.
Great.
Is that helpful, Brian?
It is, thank you.
Okay. I know it sounds super satisfying, because the best part of strategic planning is actually getting into the weeds. I mean, that's where everyone jumps to, so I appreciate that you're hungry for what the specifics are. They're coming.
Any other questions or
thoughts on the goals?
One quick thing.
Jamie?
Thanks so much for this, and I apologize for missing the last working group meeting. I know you talked about the order, Emma. I do like the idea of putting the last goal first. I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems kind of very basic. When I got to the end of it, I was like, oh, this is the thing I was thinking of. And so that's just, I just want to throw that out there.
Yep. Well, we're just bearing the lead, on this.
Yeah.
Because you're a school learning environment. Yes, but I think that makes sense. Would you have a suggestion for what would come second?
I would just move the bottom one to the top and leave the rest the same. Fine.
Okay.
Yep. I agree.
Okay.
It also kind of follows the way everything else has been.
All right. Any other questions, comments about this?
I just
or
want
for
to
Emma?
commend the group who came together to organize the full board's thoughts. I think you guys did a great job distilling.
I agree. Much better.
Good job, everyone.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. All right, all. So I will see you again soon, and we will move on to action teams and those community meetings. But it was a pleasure working with you so far, and I will see you all again soon.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Have a good night. So we do have this listed as an action item. Do people feel like we're in a place where we can approve that 2 pages with the changes, sort of the edits to come that we talked about tonight?
Definitely.
I'm seeing nods.
Absolutely.
Okay, so,
Quick question.
yes.
What is the process of approving it and then doing the community meetings about it?
That is,
Like-
well, Emma is meeting with Emily tomorrow to sort of talk about how they're going to loop in the community engagement committee.
Okay.
So I think those details are forthcoming, is sort of my understanding.
But
I don't think that was.
aren't the community to also engage to know how we're going to support these and act on them? We're not just rewriting everything.
No. I guess I'm just wondering, I guess my question is it make sense to approve them now and then take them to people, or approve them after we show them and discuss them with the public?
I think that this goes to kind of the whole, we have to, I think we have to be reminded of what the process here is, which is, we're sort of giving this, whatever many thousand feet you want to be out thing, and then it gets handed off to sort of another arm of what's going on to take it and flesh it out some more.
Right, so these are the guiding principles sort of that the action teams are going to take to start building the strategic plan for equity.
Assuming there's not some additional tweaks after the community looks at it. I think that's more Jamie's point. Not that I'm saying there is.
Well, we have to approve something for it to go out.
Right.
Right, and this is like, what does the board stand behind? Is, this is the 10,000-foot view that we feel we are responsible for and represents the work that we want to do going forward.
And if there is a change that's identified, then we would then re-vote on it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it would be incorporated as part
assuming
of
there
it.
is a change even. I'm just procedurally thinking about it.
Yeah, I think that it would come out in the process of writing the strategic plan.
And at the very end, it's the board that approves
The whole thing.
the whole plan.
Yeah.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, so having said
I'll
that.
go ahead and move that we approve the, what do you call it? The strategic plan components final draft for use by the action teams.
Do we want to add with the edits because she's
Sure.
editing?
Sure.
And then I'll second it.
Great, thank you. Any additional questions or comments with the motion on the table? Barring none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? From the distance.
It takes a while to get to Bridgeport.
No. And any abstentions? Great, all right, we have passed the board strategic plan components final draft with edits. All right, we're going to go back up the agenda, and Mary and the policy committee are going to share with us where we're at with these policies.
All right, thank you. I know the list looks long, but some of the changes that have been made are very minor. What the policy committee has been doing has been looking at all the policies that were adopted in 2016, 17, and 18, because every 3 years you're supposed to amend and make sure that those policies are still valid and that they are what you want. So most of these are going to be policy reviews. Some of them we've added because of VSBA's changing, either making them mandatory or other suggestions that have been made. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to highlight what the changes have been. And so when you read these, you'll know that this is how we got to our process. So the first one is home study students. This is following the model policy from the VSBA, which was redone by them in October of 2019. Our the last time we approved it was 11/2016. There have been no changes, so we're saying we would like to amend it as is. So after you look at that, so you know there's been no changes. D6, which is class size. Again, we're following the VSBA policy. Same dates. It was rewritten by them in October 2019 and adopted by us in 2016. The only thing that was added for this one would be under number 5, and that is this policy shall be posted on an ACSD board website and forwarded to the Secretary of Education. So that's the only piece that was added, and our policy committee felt that we should include that. And the other thing that you should know, and this you will be able to find on our board policy list on the ACSD webpage, is that there's the class size guidelines, and these are written, tell me Peter, is it yearly as you're preparing for budget? Is that how you, okay. So that's going to be added as an addendum on that policy, so parents will know or our community knows how did these class sizes come to be at this particular time. It's usually associated with the budget. Okay, C8 is pupil policy rights. This was rewritten by the VSBA January of this year. The last time we looked at it was November of 2016. They've added one piece, which is number 8 on the new policy that the draft you're getting. And it basically is, it's an extensive list of references of the legal statutes. And this is, I believe, a federal law that we're following. Okay. A6. This is specific to our board. And we are following the VSBA policy, which was written by them in October 21. Our last one was 2016. And basically, there are no changes from what the VSBA policy and what ours was. The only thing I would suggest is our committee did have an opportunity to meet with our legal counsel about defining conflict of interest. So I think I read this off back in November, or not November, in June when we first looked at this. And basically what, there was a question about, is there a conflict of interest when members of our board are also on other boards, school boards, and he said, no, there's not. So I'm going to add this to the, I'll have Heather, I'm going to ask Heather to add this note, add it to that. That comes from our meeting so that you can see that. Okay, B5, this is a prevention of employee harassment. VSBA approved it or rewrote it in 20. I think we amended it in 21. There's just been some very minor changes. One is under number 6. Instead of unwed parent, it's now going to say, unwed parent and not mother or father. And under number 7, there's a correction, a minor correction on wording that I'm going to bring to Heather's attention. It was very minor, so nothing to major changing. And then the last thing was under training. They've added some pieces that we have to make sure are in the details of the training. Again, very few minor changes. Another policy, this was one that was suggested by our full board. We had a number of community members who requested it, which was public participation at board meetings. We're following the VSBA policy that was written in March 20. So this would be a brand new policy for our board. And the only thing that we recommend is that a procedure be written to define in detail how our board meetings would be run. And so I've spoken with the Community and Education or Community and Engagement Committee, and we're going to work on this together with our group to make sure that the procedure meets, everybody agrees with it. And we may have to have a discussion at a board meeting with the recommendations about that. Okay. And then the last one is C5, which is firearms. VSBA rewrote this in 9/22. Our last one was in November 2016. We're recommending staying with the same policy that VSBA has written. The only difference is that in one paragraph at the end, instead of Department of Social and Rehabilitation Services, they now just call it DCF, Division of Children and Families. So there are no other changes. The only thing that was brought up about the firearms procedure or policy, the firearms policy that we have and that's in VSBA is directed mostly at only at students bringing firearms to school. And our policy committee feels that we really need to be broader about other community members, staff, contractors coming onto our campuses, that they understand that the policy is that they cannot bring any firearms to school. There is a law, a Vermont law and a federal law saying that there cannot be, but it's not posted anywhere. And the firearms for students is posted in their handbook, they know. But other people coming into the building or onto the campuses, we feel really should know that as well. So we were going to put that out as a suggestion. Does the committee or does the board want us to have something on that, or do we need just something in a contract? I'm not sure how people want to look at that.
Well, this is one that I checked with Sue Zaglowski from the VSBA, and in the Vermont criminal statute, she says 13 VSA section 4004 prohibits knowingly possessing a firearm or a dangerous or deadly weapon while within a school building or on a school bus. Additionally, there is a federal law covering this topic, in the Gun-Free School Zones Act and the Gun-Free Schools Act. So, I think
It's out there, but I don't know if everybody in the community knows that. Do you know what I mean?
Right, but I don't think that we as a school board can govern the community. That's not, we can govern our students, but we can't govern the community.
Jamie?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were
Well, this came up, I think, we have a policy that governs tobacco. So you can't smoke on campus. And so I guess there's a parallel, I guess I see a parallel here. Should we do the same for firearms? Like there's also a statute that says you can't smoke on a campus bus or whatever it's called. So we do govern the community in that sense. So should we do it in this case as well? I guess was the way I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
I guess the difference is that there's no law that outlaws parents smoking in a school building.
I think parents can't.
Yeah, no, and nobody.
Well, there's a federal law. Oh, okay, I take that back.
There is a federal law that says back on school grounds, but
So one thing just to add, 13 VSA, I can't remember the full title, but only pertains to inside the school building, not school grounds.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
What about the gun-free, the federal gun-free zone?
Right, for campuses.
Law.
I don't believe, I checked this a few months ago, and I don't believe that covers school grounds.
So if someone came to a football stadium?
With like a concealed weapon or something.
Yeah. Or on their gun rack.
So that was my question.
Yeah.
So my question to Sue was, is there a policy that stops or prohibits students/parents from bringing firearms onto school grounds? And she quoted 16 VSA section 1116666 requires school boards to adopt and implement policies regarding a student who brings a firearm. So then I went back to her and I asked about adults. And that's when she gave me, I said, but there's no requirement or policy about adults on campus. And that's when she went to the Vermont criminal statute.
But that.
And that's while within a school building or on a school bus.
Right.
And 16 is what we're saying to extend beyond the school building, and that's where our students who hunt in the mornings sometimes are late to school and forget they have their guns. And so that's what's come to us several times, but we don't have anything that's prohibiting other people from being on school property with that. And so can we, I guess that's what we're trying to say, can we?
That's probably the big question. If the federal gun-free.
I believe we can. I heard from legal counsel that we could.
We could.
Okay.
The board could decide to do that.
And then we just post signs. And I would extend it, I think that 13 was dangerous and deadly weapons. I've been to parent nights and I've seen large knives in people's pant pockets, and so I would extend it beyond guns and just deadly weapons, namely large knives. If we can do in buildings, but also for signage, but also on our campuses, I would advocate that we would pursue that if possible.
Okay. So I think I'm hearing consensus that people want the policy committee to look into how we can either adjust this policy.
Well, I think we can have one for
additional.
students and then a separate one for.
You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Or create an additional
Does it
one.
have to be separate?
I don't know.
Well, this one refers to expulsion hearings and things like that.
Oh, and because this is
It's a Vermont State School Board.
Recommended already.
The problem with a policy for adults on campuses, how do you enforce the policy?
Right.
They're not going to give them detention.
Right.
Usually it's a no trespass order or something like that.
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay, so I think the policy committee.
We ask them to leave, and then if they refuse, we do the no trespass. Okay.
So we're leaving the policy that we're presenting today, which is about students, on this, and then we'll
Right.
we'll
And then-
pursue something for other than students.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
That includes other than just firearms.
Yep.
Right.
Yes, right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So very minor changes, but we are recommending that we approve all these, and then there'll be another big group in November. Sorry.
Yep, and these are just for procedure here, we're not voting on these tonight, these are
This is just to
have
read
been
the
warned
presentation.
so that everybody knows that they're gonna come up for action at
Yeah.
a meeting down the road.
Okay.
Brian, do you have a question?
Yes. Earlier this evening, I found it a little bit disconcerting that an individual came and gave what I would call testimony about some possible mistakes or errors or things that were needing correction. And I think basically she was thanked and that was it. I think this public participation policy is not complete because it is missing what I would consider an adequate response by this board to an individual who makes comments or has questions. Either we will consider what she is saying and get back to her, or we can answer a question if somebody brings it up. But to have done nothing, it means nothing to me. This policy participation means it's empty because it is not providing what we need and what the community wants. They want conversation. They want maybe some answers. They have questions, and we say thank you. And that's the end of it. I don't buy it.
Can I comment on that? Yes. Brian, that was brought up in our policy committee, and it's been brought up multiple times in the school board meetings over the years. And we recognize that we need to do something. So part of the public participation policy is that we will have a procedure for our board, how we will do this. I mean, how we will respond to people so that it isn't just this empty, oh, thank you for coming goodbye, right? So that is going to be part of the procedure, and there's two groups who are going to be working on that, our policy committee and the community engagement committee, and we'll have to present recommendations to the board about the procedure, okay? So thank you.
Any other questions?
And I have to go to the policy tab on the, and I love seeing the procedure right under the policy.
Yeah.
And so that was just like, wow, because that was new from the last time I went there. So I would love to see, because then you can see it, and
That's one of our missions too, or one of our goals is to make sure all the new policies that have a procedure
Yeah.
will have that attachment
Yeah.
so that it's very quick to find it.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. All right, moving on. Are you good, Mary?
I'm done.
Okay. Mary Heather.
One thing I just want to bring up on that note, when I was looking through, I noticed that C8, I'm pretty sure the policy references
Oh.
that there's a procedure.
There is, and I have that, yeah.
It's not
Caitlin is
posted.
supposed to bring
Okay,
that to us,
perfect.
yeah.
Okay.
Caitlin will bring us the procedure.
It normally has a full laptop.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, so this next action item is, Peter has let me know that the negotiations committee, I think we need to reform. There is some questions around our ability to raise the pay for custodians, which
Yeah, there's some
becomes a
contract
bigger-
language that we want to look at. It's just, I think it's easier, just given things as they come up, for the negotiations committee to be formed, to meet periodically. I don't think it's going to be a big commitment for anyone, but to meet periodically and help with some of these things, I think it would be easier than bringing these kind of small things to the full board, and it'd be easier at the negotiations committee level. So
Yep.
I was hopeful that the committee, whether it's the same committee or a new committee, could reform and be available for conversation and discussing some of the issues that we're facing and go from there.
Great. So if you are interested in sitting on the negotiations committee, if you could send me an email in the next day, that would be greatly appreciated. I think for our purposes tonight, can we just take action on the forming of and then the who can be determined?
Yeah, I think so. I think we'll probably need to.
Don't we already have a standing committee as a negotiations committee?
We do.
Oh, you expanded it?
Well, it was,
We didn't reorg.
we didn't get reorganized.
Oh,
and
okay.
It was Lorraine.
But we have
Peter
we
has.
have a committee. It's just popular.
Right, we have a committee.
Yeah. We
It
don't
just
need to
doesn't have
create
people
it. We
in
just
it.
need to.
Right.
So is that really more the responsibility of the chair to basically, is it really board action?
To decide if we want the committee, but maybe we're saying we already have a committee, so maybe we don't.
Right, so maybe it doesn't need action.
It just needs to have you appoint people.
Yeah.
So everyone, we'll just do a little straw vote that everybody is okay with the negotiations committee taking up contract issues
Go
again.
for it.
Was it
Yeah.
in the reorg meeting? Was it listed as one of the?
Oh, man.
We didn't.
Do we want to officially take action just in case?
Why don't we do that, just in case?
I'll make a motion that we establish a board negotiations committee.
Great. Questions or comments regarding the motion on the table?
No, thank you, Jamie.
I'll second. Oh.
Just comment, just so folks who might be nervous about doing this know, we are in the first year of a 3-year contract. So at this point, this is not a committee that is going to be out negotiating any new contracts.
Right, there's not going to be a lot, there won't be a lot of meeting time in the next, it'll just be,
Negotiations committee light.
yes, light. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any objection? Any abstentions? Great, all right. So we've got the negotiations committee. If you're interested, I know Peter is interested in staying on it. If there's anyone else who's interested in being on it, please let me know in the next day or so. All right. Any other?
I'm not a big fan of these, and I apologize. I'm just curious, we only have one student board member right now. I know it's hard for students to participate. Are we working on trying to get a second student
We have
board
one
member?
and couldn't get here tonight, so I'm working to meet, because I wanted to meet with the student first and they were busy, so.
Great.
Next meeting.
A junior?
Junior.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Mary Heather.
I just want to give you guys a heads up with the next, actually, maybe this is more of a question. So the Communications and Engagement Committee has a drafted board update for October. We're still finalizing that, and when it's final, is it best to just send to everyone, just to give everyone a heads up, or should we bring it? I don't necessarily think we have to take action on it, but I just want to make sure y'all have your eyes on it before it goes out. And we're aiming to get it out sometime by the end of the month.
Yeah.
To maintain a quarterly update schedule for the board.
I would say I don't think it needs action, but that I think best practice would be if maybe the board gets it 3 days before you send it or something, to give people time to read it and reach back out to you if there's any pressing
That sounds good.
issue.
So what I'll do is I'll send it, I think we still have it scheduled for our next communications engagement committee meeting, so we'll finalize it then, send it out, BCC, so that you can respond directly to me with any comments.
Great.
So we can polish it up and get it out.
That sounds good.
March, we didn't do any
Thank
board
you.
committees. March, when we reorganized, we didn't do any committees.
Victoria?
Yes.
The Finance Committee did not come to a conclusion as to a quick time that we could meet with Matt on a very informal basis, and I just wondered if we wanted to stick around for 5 minutes and do that. Steve is not here at the moment all of a sudden, but it seems to be for what we thought would be relatively simple. We're not making any judgments, we're just saying hello, and if that would be all right, maybe we could stand on the corner and do that and have this completed, and then we'll move into the budget.
Great.
Yeah, and Matt and I met this morning, and we're talking about a meeting to have a meeting between now and the 24th of the Finance Committee to start talking a little bit.
All right, well,
With a meet and greet, but also to.
all right. That would be fine. I mean, I've met Matt, the other two members have not, in a way that is sort of a meet and greet type of situation. We can do it either way, I don't.
It could be at Haymaker.
Or not, I think it might be a conflict of interest.
That's a conflict. That's a conflict.
No, okay, so Finance Committee hang out afterwards just for
The
5 minutes.
Finance Committee will hang out for minutes afterwards, Steve, while you were gone.
Great. Okay, could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All right, we are adjourning at 8:40. Thank you all very much.